Hi, friends. First, I just want to say how grateful I am to be with you all and to get to spend 2 hours learning and practicing and being in community. And I kind of wanted to do something that I don't know if anyone has done at a Sunday Sit Talk before. Because to me, community is incredibly important, and being together is nourishing in its own right. So I just want everyone to stand up and turn to the person next to you. And maybe you feel comfortable hugging, maybe you only feel comfortable high-fiving or something, but thank the person next to you for being here.
Thank you, George.
Thank you. Very well.
Thank you, Rosie.
All right. And now, as you settle in, thank yourself for being here and for arriving. I'm very grateful to be here with you all. And the topic of this talk is growing patience, planting the seeds of patience, and also reaping the harvest. And I thought that was fitting because it is the harvest season. It's fall. The leaves are changing color. It's beautiful and crisp outside. And patience is not often comfortable. It's not an easy thing. I think a lot of us know that it can be useful in our lives, specifically in achieving whatever goals we set for ourselves, or sticking with a certain intention, a New Year's intention, a diet, learning a new skill. So the harvest is pretty clear, I think, that when we're patient, when we delay gratification, we're able to stick to the goals that we set and achieve success in whatever way you define that for yourself. But often the support that we're given in being successful, or the tips that we're given, end at be patient, or use willpower, be strong, but they don't tell us how to cultivate those traits. And the reality is that many character traits are habits that you cultivate. Success is a habit. Happiness is a habit. Patience is a habit. So I'm going to be sharing 3 seeds of success, 3 seeds to cultivate patience. And this is stemming from my experience and my learning in the positive psychology world. I got a master's degree in positive psychology at the University of Pennsylvania last year, so I'm pretty fresh from that, and it's still, all these amazing concepts are still rattling around in my brain. And over the course of the next 30 minutes, I'll also be overlaying that with the Eastern wisdom, which for thousands of years has been saying what Western psychology has sort of figured out in the last 100 years. So the 3 seeds of patience or success that we'll be talking about today are actually maybe counterintuitively gratitude, compassion, and authentic pride. So I've shared with you the first of 2 metaphors that I wanted to talk about today. The first metaphor is this metaphor of planting, of our bodies as a garden. And I love this metaphor because so much of it is out of our control. We can plant the seeds and we can water them and we can tend to them. Every morning when you wake up, the thoughts that you choose to think, welcome. This is my sister. I'm grateful she's here. And this is my brother-in-law. I'm grateful he's here too. No worries. So I'm just gonna review very briefly for the 3 new people that came in the room. We are talking about how to cultivate patience, how to build healthy habits, and the 3 seeds that we're going to be focusing on are these pro-social emotions, which I'll define, of gratitude, compassion, and authentic pride. So I wrote down a couple definitions because I think it's pretty interesting how well they overlay with Buddhist teachings. Can anyone guess what the definition of patience is? No one wants to try? Points if you want to try.
I don't remember what you put in the email.
Yeah, that's a hint. But it's the capacity to accept or tolerate, delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. So the ability to experience challenging things, discomfort, without getting angry or upset. So the second metaphor I want to give is one that I learned about first through my positive psychology program in a book called The How of Happiness by Jonathan Haidt, but actually stems from Tibetan Buddhism a long time ago, long before Jonathan Haidt stumbled upon it. And it's this metaphor of the elephant and the rider. So about 150 million years ago, small mammals began to evolve, and the limbic part of the brain was created. And this part of the brain allowed mammals to have a survival instinct, the fight, flight, or freeze response, that moved them towards pleasure and away from pain, lighting up the reward centers of the brain and teaching them what was safe, what was not safe, what was good for them to do, what was not good to do. So all the lab studies you've ever heard of with Pavlov's dogs or with mice in mazes, they're studying the limbic brain. And we are animals, even though sometimes it might seem like we've risen above that. And one way to think of the brain is that maybe it's a really old Burlington house that just had newer, more modern extensions added onto it. But the heating system is still the same, and parts of it, the inner parts of it, are still old and function the same way a dog or a mouse would function. But about 2 or 3 million years ago, the neocortex, the prefrontal cortex, formed in humans, and this allowed us to create language and culture and form tribes and communities. It's incredibly powerful and has allowed us to create cities and movements, and somewhere in there, the capacity to love and to be altruistic, to sacrifice for the ones we care about and for the causes we care about. And so now we're often in the position of knowing what's right for us and what's good for us and what's healthy for us in terms of healthy habit formation. But unfortunately, the prefrontal cortex and the logical brain isn't actually the part of the brain that allows us to stick to goals or to stick with habits. Specifically, when we get stressed out, when we get tunnel vision, when we're tired and there's cookies in front of us, it's the limbic system that makes our decisions. So the second metaphor I want to give you, the rider and the elephant. The rider is the prefrontal cortex. The elephant is the limbic system. The rider is trying to guide the elephant, trying to get the brain and the body on board with what the logical brain is saying is good. But the elephant is strong, powerful, makes decisions on an unconscious or subconscious level. And the rider is not always in charge. So this can be scary because we think we're in control, we know what we want, but one fun fact is that 44% of doctors are overweight. Why is this? They know exactly what's good for them. They know what to do, exercise, nutrition, and yet they often, almost 50% of the time, are unable to work those into their daily lives. And yes, they're stressed and they have a lot of things going on in their work lives, and but I bring up that statistic, I think, one, just to give us permission to forgive ourselves, and also to set the stage for a different, more constructive way of trying to build healthy habits. Because the reality is that willpower, although we're taught to apply this, and it's often celebrated in our culture, it actually fails us when we need it the most. It's sort of the process of swimming upstream. It can be incredibly useful, and I kind of just want to share this. I don't know if anyone knows the concept of grit. This was one of my professors at the University of Pennsylvania, but she came up with this concept of, or is one of the leading researchers in this concept of grit, which is passion and perseverance. And have you heard of this? Yeah. So I'm not trying to say that stubborn, gritty willpower is not important, but I am offering some more tools in the toolbox which allow you to flow downstream, to work with the elephant and the subconscious mind, using and harnessing the power of some of our most nourishing emotions. Pro-social emotions are emotions that connect and nourish community. So, and build community and build connections between people. And they reward you. They light up the reward center of the brain when you feel grateful, when you feel compassionate, when you celebrate a skill that you've done well. And so in the moment that you are able to experience gratitude or bring to mind something or someone that you're grateful for, you get a boost. You get this flood of joy or peace or relaxation. And I think that the most important part, even though that's really wonderful, the most important part is that you're actually creating rich soil. You're creating a habit around patience. You're creating this rich soil from which you can grow whatever habit patterns you want. So it's sort of one of the lowest hanging fruit of the meditation world and the psychology world. And even though there's neuroscience involved and there's psychology involved, and you can dig deeply into the details of all that, the takeaway is really simple. The takeaway basically is, if you wake up in the morning and you write down 3 things that you're grateful for, and throughout the day, when you have moments where you've achieved something large or small, and you choose to celebrate those things before you move on to the next thing, and you take moments, or you make it a priority in your life to tell the people you love that you love them, or to offer self-compassion to yourself, even if it's something as simple as drinking a glass of water, and as you're drinking that glass of water, imagining it as medicine or a way of nourishing your body. It doesn't have to be complicated. And there's unlimited ways to get creative with how you apply these in your life. And you don't necessarily have to take 30 minutes or an hour to meditate each day on these things in order to get the benefits of them. But doing these things creates a reservoir inside of you that makes you more able to achieve whatever goals you have. For me, I know that one of my biggest goals is to reduce the unnecessary suffering in the world. And that is kind of insurmountable. I mean, that is a pretty big goal. And I think logically it might seem, or you could even take something a little smaller. Say my goal is to make it through my first year at the monastery. 2 months to go. So it may seem like waking up in the morning and writing down 3 things I'm grateful for isn't actually a stepping stone to achieving that, or celebrating the things I've accomplished. Is that actually helping me achieve that? Doesn't seem logically like a stepping stone. But the takeaway here is that by weaving those into your daily life, in whatever form you choose, you're nourishing yourself. And when moments of challenge arrive in your life, you have that fertile soil from which to grow success, or you have that personal reservoir. I really like that metaphor as well, to draw upon. So if you take the example of sticking to a diet, which I think most people in this room have probably tried, and the vast majority of the time it doesn't succeed. By cultivating gratitude, or by cultivating self-compassion, you're actually taking a probiotic taking a meditative multivitamin that boosts your psychological immune system. And then when you're presented with the cookies that are not on your diet, or a smorgasbord of goodies that are not on your diet, you're more resourced to make the decisions you want to make long before you get to that point. And there are so many other tools in the toolbox for those particular moments. There's this really interesting study of smokers who wanted to quit smoking. And half of the group was told to just try not to smoke. And the other half of the group was told that they could smoke if they wanted to, no problem. But they were asked to try to be mindful of the smoking experience. And some of the smokers, so to cultivate curiosity, and some of the smokers came back and said, smoking smells and tastes like rotten eggs. So there are, that is bringing curiosity to trying to break an addiction or create a healthy habit. That is an amazing tool, and it's very useful. And willpower, too, can be incredibly useful. Many of you know Soryu, our head teacher at the monastery. And I think he has perhaps the strongest willpower I've ever experienced. So I'm definitely not discrediting that as a tool. I don't think we would have the 4-minute mile if we didn't have people with willpower. But this is sort of like the low-hanging fruit and I think the best kept secret of psychology that we can all incorporate into our lives and help each other incorporate into our lives. So the book I'm drawing on most strongly for this talk is a book called Emotional Success by David DeSteno. And he really stresses the importance or the value in cultivating these 3 pro-social emotions because of how they can improve our individual lives and make us more successful on an individual basis. But I'd like to add to that because I really think that even more important than that is the ways that cultivating these emotions can nourish and build our communities. And you can apply this in your individual meditation practice. And we're going to be doing that, taking a chunk of time for each one of those emotions to get more familiar with them. But you can also do it in the ways that you interact with the people around you. And that's actually the organic pro-social meditation. That's the everyday opening the door for someone, telling someone that you're grateful they're in your life, hugging for the people who walked in a little late. We did that at the beginning, so maybe you can grab a hug or two on your own time. All right now. I like that. So I think for me, the thing I'm most grateful for is actually in preparing for this talk. It's actually been one of the more powerful weeks of meditation for me, because I knew I couldn't come up here and sit in front of you and talk about gratitude or self-compassion without applying it to my own meditation practice. And what I found, and I'm glad I'm able to share this with you before we do some of the meditation, is that it was incredibly hard for me to be compassionate towards myself. I didn't even know what that sounded like or looked like. I had to Google, self-compassion, meditation, mantras, because while one of my main goals is to offer compassion to the world and be a helper and a caregiver, a witness and a loving force, I realized that I haven't quite gotten there in offering that to myself, which is a really good place to start. And I'm proud because I've seen it actually get easier and easier to be kind to myself over the last week. It reminds me of the way that plants can take a rocky desert landscape and slowly, with a few starters, sturdy starter plants, break down the soil enough for new plants to take root, and from there completely change the landscape. And I think these sorts of meditations are a lot like that. At first, for many of us, it might feel very uncomfortable and alien to spend time being proud of ourselves. I know the first time I heard that, I even had an aversion to it. I thought, this doesn't feel humble, this doesn't feel good. But it actually is a really nourishing practice to do. And if we can do that for ourselves, then we can model it for others. And we can offer it to others, which is something I'm committed to being able to do. So, in a couple minutes, we're going to move into a gratitude meditation. And I think I'll just leave you all with this metaphor of planting the seeds, not necessarily needing to do the long-term, creating the entire long-term success that you're reaching for, but just doing the small first step of planting a seed of gratitude or compassion, watering it over time, chipping away at it, letting whatever resistance there might be thaw, and seeing through your own experience what happens with time. So, with that, feel free to stretch a little bit if you want before we go into our meditation. So I invite you all to close your eyes or have a soft gaze, to stretch up and settle in. Feeling your feet on the ground, your butt on the chair, and bringing your attention to your breath. Slow, deep breaths into your belly. This breath is something you can always come back to as an anchor, a reminder that you are alive. Feel free to add your own gratitudes as we go forward. But with each in-breath, bring forth gratitude for air. And on each out-breath, a relaxation. And if you feel called to add new gratitudes on the in-breath, I am grateful for whatever it is you're grateful for. And on the out-breath, a relaxation of body. You can bring a smile to your lips as an extension of your gratitude. And if your mind wanders, you can always come back to the breath. Try to say thank you with each in-breath and each out-breath. As Shinzen Young says, the goal is to try to say yes to each moment and each experience as soon as possible. With the next in-breath, imagine someone you love dearly. You can thank them, trying to envision them as clearly as possible in your mind. Thanking them for being in your life. From here, we'll transfer from gratitude to compassion. I'll say a loving kindness mantra out loud. Feel free to follow along in your head, offering these wishes to your loved one. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be at ease. May you be free from all suffering. May you be nourished. You can imagine yourself as a butterfly or a bird alighting on a flower or a branch, bringing to mind another dear loved one, another person you care for. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be at ease. May you be free from suffering. May you be nourished. You can imagine this nourishment, this loving kindness entering your body with each in-breath. Maybe it has a color, a golden light, pink shimmer. And on the out-breath, sending it out to those you love, care about. And now directing that same intention to yourself. Breathing in compassion, sending it throughout your body. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be at ease. May I be free from suffering. May I be nourished. Imagine this compassion filling your body with each in-breath, making its way through your arms, to your fingers, down your legs to your toes. Spreading warmth and light to all of your extremities. And in a moment, I'll ring a bell. Feel free to get up, move, stretch, grab water, use the restroom, get some fresh air, hug another friend, and try to keep the compassion and gratitude with your breath, keeping that awareness in the background. I invite us to stretch up and settle in again. And for the last 20 minutes, we'll go through exploring a place of healing and ending in celebration of an achievement, large or small. I invite you to bring your awareness back to your breath. And bringing to mind an experience over the last week or two that's left you feeling disappointed, disheartened, an experience where you wish you could have done better. What does it feel like in your body to bring this experience to mind? Offering forgiveness, a sense of acceptance, maybe a gentleness, if that feels accessible to you. I invite you, if you like, to place one hand over your heart and another on your belly. Offering yourself gentleness and love. In moments like these, when you wish you could have done more, done better, or in any moment, you can offer this care to yourself. You can say, I am doing a good job. I am doing the best I can in this moment. I am doing my best. Thank you for breathing. Thank you for caring. If those words don't resonate, you can offer yourself any words of loving kindness, support, gentleness that feel accessible to you in this moment. Now bring to mind a moment over the past week or two in which you accomplished something big or small. A project, cooking a meal, seeing a friend, calling a loved one. Something that you can celebrate and be proud of. What does it feel like to have accomplished this task? Relief, exhilaration, exhaustion, satisfaction. Allow yourself to feel this fully. and celebrate what you've achieved the way you might for a good friend. Now imagine something you wish to accomplish over the next week. A goal that feels important to you. Imagine how it might feel to accomplish this task. The sense of relief, accomplishment, pride, joy you might feel when this task is complete. And in this last minute or two, offering one last gratitude or loving kindness or pride to yourself or someone you love or to the world. Thank you so much for doing that with me. This next half an hour is a time to share about your experience or to ask any questions of me or to the group. I welcome thoughts, feedback, or even discussion about how this was for all of you. Or we could just spend 30 minutes sharing what we're grateful for. That works too.
I'm curious that you defined patience, and I'd be curious for you to define pride.
Yeah. I'll give you the dictionary definition. But I actually like the verb of taking pride better, so I have that too. Pride is a feeling of deep pleasure or satisfaction derived from one's own achievements, the achievements of those with whom one is closely associated, or from qualities or possessions that are widely admired. And to take pride in is to celebrate a particular action, skill, or quality. That one felt more applicable to me and more accessible. And a little simpler as well.
Because I've had the same responses you did initially, maybe. And about it sort of makes me bristle because it almost feels patronizing to, as an adult, to be proud of another adult. So that was just interesting for me to think about, taking, and that definition was helpful.
Yeah. Do you feel that same way when doing the gratitude exercises and the compassion exercises? No?
You mean that same sort of
Bristling aversion?
No.
Okay. It doesn't surprise me. I definitely felt and have felt the same way. Not wanting to, because we don't really do it that often. And I think the desire to practice humility often repels us away from authentic pride. But that's why in the book Emotional Success, David DeSteno specifically delineates between hubristic pride and authentic pride. And the difference he gives is that when you're authentically prideful, you're celebrating something that you've actually accomplished, and your pride in your accomplishment is is sort of deserving of that pride. If you were to celebrate something, a skill or an action that you didn't actually achieve, or to be proud of yourself for something you didn't actually do, then that would be hubristic pride. And that can actually be unhealthy or less constructive in forming healthy habits or nourishing yourself, because it can kind of blind you to what's actually happening.
When you say that, I think of the difference between power within versus power over. I'm thinking Hebrews pride can feel to me like power over something or over someone, or power or authentic pride. It's just how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, so having this stoking the flames of a inner confidence and inner fire versus, it almost seems like the difference between pity and empathy to me. Meeting someone where they are at, or celebrating or being present with the experience versus coming to someone's aid or
Separate. Feels like one is separate and one is partnered.
Yeah, I like that description.
So I'm not sure exactly what you said before I showed up, because I got here just in time for the meditation. But I find, this sort of nexus of topics and work that you put out came, I think, at a good time for me in terms of what I've been working with. But I sort of wonder how, I think over the last approximately year, I've really been working through a lot of issues where I've been exposed to situations where I really question myself, sometimes for rational reasons, and a lot of almost kind of psychological self-torture or something comes from that process in my experience, especially when I push at other people's boundaries. And I think that the way that I push at other people's boundaries in these situations is appropriate, but there's something very intensely, I don't know, enervating about the process or something in my experience of getting in a situation where there's maybe a kind of advocacy involved, but that involves other people's ostensible suffering in that situation. And I wonder how you might sort of see working with that kind of thing, and if there are sort of mindfulness stuff that you have experience with in approaching that type of question.
So, to be clear, do you feel like you're pushing up against people's boundaries in a desire to support them or help free them from patterns, or as a friend coming in, or I think I need a little more clarity on how you're coming in.
Different forms,
Okay.
I guess. Sometimes it's like that, but sometimes if I'm not going to free them from what they're doing internally, then it's freeing other people from the consequences of their actions. So it varies in terms of the purpose and the probable outcome of the actions.
Yeah. I think I can speak to what cultivating these 3 pro-social emotions can do in those situations. So, in theory, you would sort of just continually practice cultivating gratitude or cultivating compassion and authentic pride throughout your daily life, maybe just for a few minutes in the morning and a few minutes in the evening before going to sleep. And then the idea is that even if you don't necessarily deploy them actively in those situations that you're talking about, where you're brushing up against people's boundaries or maybe your own edge of where your comfort zone is, that you will actually be able to make the right decision for yourself about how you act, not being governed by your fear or perhaps your need for survival or comfort, but instead, as it sounds like you are already choosing to do, coming from your authentic sense of what the moment asks of you and needs of you, which no one can tell you, no one can guide you in making those decisions except you in those moments. So in my mind, this is sort of, so I know that doesn't give you maybe the tools for the moment, but in my mind, it seems to sort of clear some of the dust from the window so that you can see more clearly what the moment might ask of you or need from you, so that you can act skillfully. And if you're creating a habit around patience, then you're not going to be as reactive in those moments. And if you're cultivating a habit of compassion, then you'll be able to meet any situation or any individual or group of people with love as one of your primary, as your guiding compass, or one of your primary decision-making factors. Does that make sense or land?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes what the actual experience of it is sort of an internal deadness that's very hard to, it can set an intention to be in those spaces and do various approaches to maybe try to get in touch with those qualities, but sometimes it's just really, in a sort of experiential sense, they're not available or they're barely available. And I'm not sure there is an answer to this question exactly. That's verbal at least, but it just strikes me that I know at least that I don't really know what I'm doing approaching some of these kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah.
I feel like I might be hearing an intention in there, or a goal for yourself in there.
Well, my goal would be to be able to overcome that sort of sense of stuckness. Of, like, even if I'm going to go into those states, that I can come out of them into a different place and be present in a different way in my own life and in those situations, rather than approaching it from a point of view of where my sort of emotional self is kind of like under some weird sort of negative sedation or something, like it. So so my goal would be to be able to bring myself into a different space and approach the situation. So sometimes what I find I do is I end up spending a lot of effort in distraction. And in the distracted state, when I'm doing something sort of less important, I think sorry you sort of touched on the sort of problem of doing important things. Like when I'm doing something less important that would ordinarily be less relevant, I suddenly become a lot happier. My, general liveliness can come back, but then I'm not accomplishing anything in the outer world that I need to be. So that's like the one tool that's actually been most effective, but it also comes at a very obvious cost, and so it at least has to be used delicately. And I just don't know. I think a lot of people that I've talked to about these kinds of things haven't necessarily tried really going through certain kinds of situations in a long-term way to solve a problem that involves these sort of experiences maybe. So I don't know, I just don't know if there's sort of a known path to kind of use like spiritual or mindfulness techniques in a way that's really effective with this kind of thing, or if it's just not really a set of tools that maybe are really available in a precise way to like answer that question. So it's a quandary, it's a question, and I guess my intention is to find out how to go through that, or at least take it so that if I have to go through this kind of thing, I'm doing it at a different level of situation and accomplishing more and maybe better service to other people or something when it's happening. So that's the intention.
Yeah. I wanna celebrate that you are making this an intention for yourself, to try to explore what tools and best practices there might be to bring yourself to these challenging situations and interactions as skillfully as you can. And also, I just want to urge you to offer some compassion to yourself in these moments. In my experience, there's no really clear equation to follow in order to make a challenging interaction go smoothly or well. But the fact that you have the desire is a huge step. And the wisdom is there. Even if it's hard to reach it due to numbness, or which is something I experience, or paralysis, or confusion, or uncertainty. So I wish I could say, do this or apply this tool. But even if I did, I'd be doing you a disservice, because I wouldn't be setting you up for success. So the best thing I can share with you is continue to work with that intention. Yeah.
Put a perspective of a little more years, I guess, because compassion and gratitude and authentic pride are not easy. And part of being compassionate to yourself is to realize that it's not easy and that you're going to get it wrong sometimes. And you forgive
forgive yourself for that and just go on.
Yeah. I really appreciate that because it is very simple, but it's not easy. Just like you said.
I start out my day, every morning with the intention that I'm going to be a caring and compassionate person, and then I hear something on the news and back to the drawing board.
And
But you can still draw on compassion for yourself and for other people.
yeah. And I don't know if this is something you experience, but when I catch myself not responding to others or to the news with the compassion that I want to exude, I find myself being very self-critical, which ironically is exactly the opposite of, you know, the loving compassion that I want to exude. So learning to catch that more and more, and I'm sure that you have your own experiences with that.
Well, that is really the biggest part of the process, is to catch yourself, to be aware of that, and
Mm-hmm.
offer yourself some compassion and go on.
Andrea?
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of studies, the weight loss and the smokers,
Mm-hmm.
and in terms of results, if the group that practiced self-compassion in the weight loss and the ones that practiced awareness in the smoking, were they more successful?
I don't remember the weight loss statistics, but for the smoking study, they were.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, actually, I don't need to necessarily give my explanation for why,
Yeah.
but yes.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah, George?
I find sometimes I find difficulty in reconciling the two concepts of gratitude on the one hand, which is developing thankfulness for certain conditions in your life,
Mm-hmm.
and then what we're doing at Monastic Academy on the other, which is developing conditionless, unconditioned happiness. So when I was doing the gratitude
Mm-hmm.
meditation, I was thinking of all the things that made me happy today, and I started with my shower in the morning, and like how nice it was to be able to have a warm shower. And then I found myself sort of basking in the memory of the pleasure of the shower,
Mm-hmm.
and that didn't feel like developing conditionless happiness.
Mm-hmm.
That felt like next time I'm gonna have a shower, it's gonna be so good. I can't wait to shower for the rest of my life. And if I ever am put in a position where I can't have a nice warm shower, then I'm gonna be more miserable,
Mm-hmm.
because I've developed craving towards hot showers. So I wonder how you reckon
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you asked this question. So the way I think of harnessing the power of pro-social emotions is sort of a bridge between where I am right now and where I want to be on the path, in terms of being easily satisfied or being happy regardless of conditions. I think of it similarly to the way someone addicted to cigarettes might choose to, I can't remember the right word. I think it's something up. They switch their unhealthy habit with a slightly less unhealthy habit. So trade up. So maybe instead of smoking cigarettes, they're using nicotine patches, or they're using an e-cigarette that doesn't have nicotine in it, or they're eating a lot of gum, chewing a lot of gum, things like that. And yeah, it's training wheels,
Right.
in a way. But I think that the main takeaway is that it's harnessing the power of the natural reward center of the brain, which, I mean, your brain rewards you for moments of gratitude, for moments of compassion, for moments of pride.
But ultimately, we should be working towards having gratitude even for suffering and pain, right?
Well, I think when you become, take for the Dalai Lama, for example, or someone who's practiced for decades, they're not lying when they express gratitude or joy in moments when others might when others might suffer in those situations. Or Shinzen Young, who just led a retreat at our center, he experiences a ton of physical pain when he sits, but he leads use a 2.5 hour sits with us every day during retreat, and he still has a smile on his face. And he's not, you can tell he's not lying about that. He's not acting.
Is there a case of a meditation teacher saying they're grateful for their suffering?
I wasn't talking about any specific teaching. It just seems to me that developing unconditional happiness does not, you shouldn't just be grateful for the good things in your life. It's unconditional happiness is unconditional gratefulness. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think there might be pain, but not suffering. You know, if you get to a certain point, then all the stimuli that's hitting your body wouldn't actually be interpreted
I think of
as suffering.
values. The values can still be there, whatever the conditions are. So yeah, a nice warm shower is very, very nice. It's enjoyable. I think of like Viktor Frankl and people like that. That even in prison camp, generosity is still maybe even more beautiful there because it's so, hard. You got a little bit of bread and you're really hungry, and you give it to somebody else. So there's value there in those really extreme conditions. You can still reach for your higher values.
Yeah, Jima.
I didn't know when it was time to share my experience, but it could be a segue from what we were talking about, or not. I've been studying the movement to expanded consciousness, and as opposed to local awareness, to expanded awareness. And when we do this practice of gratitude, and particularly the point where we're forgive me for my slowness. Particularly when we look at what we are not satisfied with in our behavior, and what we are satisfied with in our behavior. And when I looked at those two things in this practice now, I was able to move outside of the reactive pattern. And I think that could be the goal with the shower or
the suffering or any of it, that you're just not reacting with judgment that it's, oh, I did this wrong or I did this right, and but more look at what happened and what did I learn from this, or just look at it, just be with it, and take it, go to that expanded awareness where you're just looking without judgment, and then you see it. Anyway, my experience today was that I gained a lot of insight into what I felt I did wrong, or what I felt I did right, being somehow the same, because they were both just giving me information about what would work in my life. What, in other words, if I, out of exuberance or excitement, somehow overstepped somebody's boundary, or was not or when I was experiencing something also that I was proud of, it was showing me who I am or what I can do or what I want in a good way. That it was giving me information. So if I could just see it as information, and certainly would want to correct overstepping somebody's boundaries, but just, oh, look at the whole picture. I was so excited about this. What does that tell me? Or, being proud of something, what does that tell me? And I don't have to get over prideful or feel like I'm grasping or something, it's just like, oh, okay, I think I can move easier in a more peaceful way towards something that is an expression of my soul. Does that make any?
Yeah, that sounds like,
is that helpful at all?
that sounds like deep gratitude for each moment and that the wisdom that it's teaching you, regardless of whether it's labeled as a success or a failure, or
Right.
stripping it down to
Or
the
something
data.
that you want or something that you don't want, information.
That's a beautiful insight. Thank you for sharing that. So that's all the time we have for Q&A. There's a couple announcements that some of the other residents are going to make, but I'm really excited to introduce our 3 apprentices very briefly. George joined us 2 weeks ago. 3 weeks. Was it? It's really been 3 weeks.
I think it was 3. I don't know.
Let's say it.
Right? And Ashley and Kyoshin 2 weeks. So I was just going to have all 3 of you share your name, where you're from, and what brought you here.
Should I go first?
Go for it.
I'm George. I'm from Leeds, England. So that's 2 of the 3 down. What brought me here? I feel like I've been saying this a lot recently because I get asked the question a lot, I suppose. I guess I was very I'm like a big atheist and like a real rationalist, and that felt very like nihilistic basically. I felt pretty purposeless, kind of hated existing just because there's no purpose, no goal, no prescriptive ethics, no way I ought to behave, and that felt pretty terrifying. And then in my final year of studying philosophy, I took 2 classes, one in Buddhism and one in Eastern philosophy, and it kind of just seemed to magically provide answers to all my problems. Kind of. Like, I have to face my problems now. Which sucks.
Welcome, George.
But yeah, like, it's a path that makes so much sense to me on my own terms. I don't have to, everything is so rational. It, like, every step makes perfect sense to me. I don't have to suspend judgment. Every step on the path just sort of is guided by your own reason and intuition. And that's what's so great about it. And the Monastic Academy is like the only place really that offers intensive, rigorous practice on those terms. So that's why I had to come all the way to the mall. Thanks.
I'm Ashley. I'm from California and came here for a few reasons, but I met Rosie and Miles, if you know Miles, and being in their presence was pretty powerful. I wasn't good friends with them, but the feeling of being really seen by someone, and being with people who aren't trying to like fix your problems or I don't even know, not even comfort you really, but just see you, was really powerful to me. And I wanted to be someone who could do that for other people. And I think this past year I've had a lot of time to had a more quiet year where it's not filled with busyness, so I could observe my patterns more, and I kind of saw how things that might be easier in the moment played out pretty negatively in the overall grand scheme of things. So I really want to work on being more aware of those patterns so I can try to stop them and just be more authentic.
My name's Kirsten, and I'm from Delaware. And I've been going to silent retreats for about 10 years, and try to ramp up and intensify practice by going on longer retreats, and like a month and 6 weeks. And then saw the opportunity to be part of this program and go for 3 months, and we'll see what happens with that. Good to be here.
So good to have you three.
I also have an announcement. Actually, come to think of it, sorry you wanted me to introduce myself. I never got to do it. So my name is Dan. I'm from Connecticut. I came to the Monastic Academy 12 months ago because I was interested in rigorous meditation in a place that was mostly secular and had a gnawing curiosity about that for years. To some extent, I feel like I've scratched that itch, but I've also revealed how much bigger it is than I thought. So there is much more work to do. tomorrow marks the 1-year anniversary of my signing up to be a resident and the fulfillment of that commitment. After many months of deliberating, I will be departing a week from tomorrow. So I will be delivering next Sunday's talk. I don't know what I'll be talking about. I hope I think of something. I'm kind of still piecing everything together. It's like I've been blindsided for an entire year of my life. So we'll see what happens.
You've had a year, man.
It takes a lot of processing.
Yeah. I'm definitely not ready to see you go, Dan, but I'm excited for you to give the talk next week.